Hey everyone, Brian Zane here. If you see the title of this video, you know exactly what I'm going to talk about. It is Thursday, August 9th, 2018, and just a couple hours ago I was informed of very tragic news about the loss of a friend of mine, someone who you've seen on this channel before. He's gone by a lot of different names in his life. He was known as Brian Carlucci, he was known as the Spartan Swinger, but to me he will always be known as Dano. Brian Danovich passed away at the age of 38. He, I believe suicide is the cause of his death based on what I've been able to glean from his Facebook page and what others have written on it in the wake of his passing. This sucks. This is really, really sad. I'm saddened, I'm stunned, I'm heartbroken, I'm crushed. I'm about 1,000 different adjectives that you could come up with to describe, how I'm feeling about this right now. I apologize because this is not going to be a very coherent video. I'm going to be doing a fair amount of rambling and tangents and going on about different things. I might not reach the end of certain stories because I'm going to be being reminded of other things about him. Like I said, he's been on this channel before. You've seen him in my $1 Million Tough Enough review, which is one of my personal favorites I've ever done. He actually showed up about a month and a half ago in my Titus O'Neil video, doing a cameo there, kind of keeping that the running gag of that going on. He was a damn good guy. He was so entertaining, he was so funny, he was so friendly, he was so loyal. If you were his friend, he would give you the shirt off his back. He loved everyone like a brother, like a paisan. That's what he called everybody. Hey paisan, how you doing? And let me start off by talking about how I first met him. He emailed me. He reached out to me in an email about 2.5 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And he introduced himself. He said, hey, Paisan, I was this guy $1 Million Tough Enough. I don't know if you remember who I am. And I did, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But he was like, if you ever want to interview me for something, like I'm available. And I thought about it. I don't like to interview wrestlers just in kind of a straight up interview. It's not my thing, and I don't try and do it that often unless I have the opportunity. But I like to do funny things. I like to do silly things with my guests. I want to try and think outside the box with them. And so I thought about the $1 Million Tough Enough and what I could talk about with that. My mind always kept, even before this show ever materialized, I always thought about the $1 Million Tough Enough, and I always thought about his story. Because he was the guy who did the tryouts, he made it to the finals on whatever beach it was in California, and he was doing the bench pressing, he tore his pec, and then the next day he continued, he did the second part of it with the obstacle course and everything. He finished it, he gutted it out despite this huge torn pectoral muscle. And he was so passionate about it. He wanted to get signed so badly. And if you watch that audition special and you watch the tryouts and everyone who's all the hopefuls who were there in that beach and the ones who submitted their tapes, and you see the little snippets of people cutting promos in that highlight reel, his, above all else, and this is far before I ever met him, so I'm not saying this from a place of bias, I'm saying this is just how I remember it. This was a guy who just stood out among everybody else on that entire highlight reel and really in that whole audition thing. He had the body, he had the personality, he had the charisma, he had the total package. And if things were different, I think he could have gotten signed easily. The thing was, after he got hurt, he did get signed to a developmental deal on the spot because they were so enamored with his drive and his passion and his dedication for the business and wanting that so badly. And so they gave him the deal, the developmental contract, and of all the people on Tough Enough, more so than the finalists, more so than Mike the Miz or Daniel Puder or whoever else made it to those finals, Danovich's story was the one that I was the most curious about. He was the one I wanted to keep checking in on and say, well, when's he gonna get signed? When's he gonna get up to the main roster? When's he gonna, show the world what he can do? I was really excited to see what this guy was capable of. Unfortunately, that never happened because he kept getting hurt. He got hurt again and again and again, and they kept paying for all his treatments and stuff, and eventually they cut him because he was too much of a liability. And that would be kind of a recurring thing throughout the rest of his life. He was very injury prone. He was very accident prone. The stuff that you saw in those videos that he appeared in of mine, it was a bit of every joke has a little bit of truth, and that was kind of how it was for him. I don't want to say he was an unlucky man, but he he had a lot of setbacks in his life and his career, from injuries of all different kinds. At one point, several years ago, he got skin cancer and he beat that. He had some other personal tragedies I don't want to go into the details of in this video, but he went through a lot of stuff. And I think what I was most impressed about him after talking with him and learning about all this was how he was able to keep his head high through all this and just keep going. He was such an optimist. He had such a positive attitude about everything. And, as we were talking about how we could use him on the show and what he could do in $1 Million Tough Enough in my review of it, that's when I came up with the idea of, well, what if we take this story, this admittedly shitty story of you keep getting hurt, and we turn it to some kind of we kind of lighten it a little bit. We just make it a running gag where you're kind of this cartoon character who keeps getting hurt. And he originally kind of balked at the idea. He wasn't 100% sold on it. But the more I talked to him about it, and the more his then girlfriend talked to him about it as well, and this is all stuff he would tell me later, the more he realized that this was going to be good for him, to be able to take this really crappy situation he found himself in, to face it head on, to face his demons, so to speak, and to, take its power away by turning it into a running gag. And so I think it really worked out. I think when you watch the video, when you watch $1 Million Tough Enough, he put his all into it. He dove headfirst into it, and he was just so great in that role. And I said before, and I'll say it again, one of my favorite episodes of all time. And he and his involvement was a big reason as to why that was the case. I didn't know how much of an impact that cameo would make on him until the months and the years that followed, because we developed a really good friendship. Unfortunately, I think my biggest regret with Dano is that we never met in person. We saw each other on Skype once when I was directing his cameo in the $1 Million Tough Enough video, but we never met face to face in person. But we talked a lot on the phone and a lot on Skype and a lot on Facebook Messenger, and we were just he would call you any hour of the day and the night too, when you were asleep oftentimes, to just, see how you were doing. He just wanted to talk shop with you. He wanted to talk wrestling. He was just he got wrestling so well, and wrestling was his life. Wrestling was his passion. You could see it. Again, I keep bringing this up. You saw it in the Tough Enough tryouts. Wrestling was something he was very dedicated to. It was his life's mission to become a wrestler with WWE. He had the belts he made out of paper, construction paper. He was doing all the stuff. He was so dedicated to physical fitness and practicing promos and stuff. And we talked about our respective stuff in wrestling a lot. And just he got it. He got it so well. And to talk about his dedication and his passion for wrestling and for fitness. He told me a story once. I forget if it was middle school or high school, but he got suspended for a day from his school because he was in the weight room for too long and they couldn't get him to leave. And so that's just, to me, it's a silly story, but to me that's so emblematic of the passion he had for this line of work. And I say passion because that was the name of his podcast he had for a time before he died, Wrestling with Passion. And that was Brian to a T. He was so damn passionate about wrestling and wanting to be a part of it. He would do anything. And when you talk to him about wrestling, and when he interviewed me, and when he interviewed other people on that podcast, he was so passionate and just so invested in everything he did with wrestling. It was a level of passion and dedication that I wish every wannabe wrestler who wants to train and wants to get in the business, his ethic, his work ethic and his attitude and his personality are what I want all wannabe wrestlers to aspire to be, because he was just so driven and so engaged and so into it. And I think really his body was his own worst enemy because he kept getting hurt. And if things happened a different way, if he didn't get this injury or that injury, who knows what would have happened. But like I said, he was practically he fell in the company's lap. And I think if things went another way, he would have been signed. And I may never have met him because he would have done so well for himself. He wouldn't have the time to email me. And that's back before my channel really even got anywhere. So it was, getting to work with him was great. Getting to know him was better because he was a very talkative person. He had so much to talk about, you know. He had so much life to talk about, and he would talk to you, and he would want to know how your family was doing. Like, he would tell me on multiple occasions, like, "Hey, Paisan, I see your pictures of you and your wife and kids on Facebook, and I'm jealous, Paisan," because, you know, he never got the chance to have kids, and I know that was something that was very important to him. This kills me. I again, I apologize. I'm not going to be the most coherent in this, but God Almighty, this is a guy who was taken from us way too soon. A guy who did not. This is a guy who I wish was treated better by the world. I wish and by luck and by fate, whatever you want to call it. I wish he was given that chance. I wish that he got the chance to show the world what he was capable of in the ring. You know, one point of pride for me, something that I'm always proud of, thinking about it now. My show, admittedly, has a long history, a rich history of guests who are almost universally panned by viewers. I'm not going to lie about that. But of all my guests, he was the one who was probably the most, he was looked on the most favorably and the most positively by fans. And I'm going to be proud of that. I know was proud of that as well. I think that, and I'm not trying to stroke my ego, I'm not trying to blow my horn, but he would tell me this frequently and with great aplomb and passion, that how much and how important that appearance on that video was to him, and how it lifted his spirits, and how, like, he'd walk down the street in New York and every once in a while he'd be recognized for his cameo appearance on my show, and he would, like, put the guy on the phone to tell me that he saw the guy. Like, it made him immensely proud to be a part of this show. He talked about it like it was one of his greatest accomplishments in life. And I'm like, I was humbled by that. You know, I'm just a guy who sits at his desk all day and makes fun of wrestling. That's, you know, this shirt that I'm wearing now, the yellow belt design. He had a shirt like this as well. He said it was his favorite shirt. And, like, you know, a few months ago, he got in a fight with some people on the street. Again, there's the unluckiness again. And he had his shirt ripped up in the fight. And so I got him another shirt. He was very grateful for that. And so now whenever I wear this shirt, I'm going to think of Dano. I'm going to think of our friendship. And I'm going to think of, you know, just the connection we had, just as people who are both involved in wrestling, people who have the passion for wrestling. And I think he was taken from the world far too soon. You know, like I said, he was one of my favorite guests I ever had on my show, and I even used him as recently as a couple months ago. He was going to be involved in another upcoming project of mine, which is going to involve a lot of different personalities, and of almost everybody that I've tapped to be a part of this video, his involvement was the one I think I was the most excited for, because I had this vision and this plan. I told him about it. He was really jazzed about it and really psyched, and I knew he could do it because he was a performer and he was a professional and he was an expert at what he did. And he had the personality and the passion and the charisma to pull it off and make it really good. And now, of course, that's not going to happen. I talked to him months ago, once I booked my trip to New York for next year's WrestleMania. I said, Dano, you and I, we're going to hang out in Long Island. I'm going to get a video. We're going to shoot a travel channel segment kind of thing where you walk me around your hood in Long Island, and you're going to show me all your favorite places to hang out, and we're going to do this thing. And he was really excited about that too, and that's unfortunately not going to happen now. I mean, I'm sad not as much for that as the fact I'm not going to meet him in person, face to face. I'm not going to get that opportunity, and you know, all the phone calls in the world, as wonderful as they were and as much as I'll cherish them now, can't compare to actually, you know, the chance to meet him in person. And I'm sad I never got to do that. You know, if you want a more insight of that kind of aspect of Brian's life, V Infuso, Social Injustice Warrior, he just did a live stream about it today, talking about it. You know, as close as I felt I was with Dano, I think V was closer. So I think you can get a different perspective on that as well. But that's just my perspective on working with Dano and talking to him over the last couple of years. He always, like I said, he was very proud about being in Wrestling with Regret, about part of that family, and he wanted to do anything he could to, like, you know, help out, and he wanted to, you know, be more involved. And he's like, hey, Paisan, when's the next time you put me another video? And, like, you know, that I was always kind of thinking about what to put him in. That's where I came up with Titus O'Neil and having him do that cameo of keeping the running gag going. God, he had so much promise and so much potential. And I think, you know, just all the issues he's had with his, with his injuries and his substance abuse and all this other stuff, all this other tragic bullshit in his life. I think it caught up to him. And in the words of someone who wrote on his Facebook, he just gave up. And that's very sad to hear, because he was a guy who had, I think, a lot to live for. And I think he had so many people who loved him and who wanted him to get better and wanted him to succeed. And now that opportunity is gone. I'm pretty emotionally spent now, and I don't know what else I can really say about Dano. I'll just reiterate what things I've said to sum up all my feelings. I'm going to miss him dearly. I'm going to miss him terribly. I'm going to miss talking to him on the phone. I'm going to miss his laugh. I'm going to miss his personality. I wish I got to meet him, and I wish I got to know him better. And I wish that more people got to see what he could do as a wrestler, as a performer, whatever. I think about him all the time. Even before he died, I was thinking about him every day, because I was wondering what he was up to. And now I hope he's in a better place. Brian, Dano, I miss you. I love you. And I hope to see you again someday. Thank you.